UFC 241 in Anaheim. Absolutely lived up to all the advance hype. That was a great event, a great card. I don't think anybody could say that they threw down for that and did not get a great ROI. And not because Stipe Miocic pulled off an amazing win over Daniel Cormier to reclaim the heavyweight belt. That was great. But I'm not saying the event was great because of that. I mean, in part. But mostly because of the return of one Nate Diaz. No, check that. Nathan Donald Diaz. Let's get into Nate Diaz for a moment. Do you know how rare and unique a guy you have to be to steal the headlines from a battle between a couple of heavyweight legends? Do you know how rare and unique a guy you have to be to come back after 3 years off and fight a former champion in Antony Pettis? Do you know how rare and unique you have to be to even accept that fight? Do you know how rare and how unique a guy you have to be to actually win that fight? And finally, do you know how rare and unique a guy you have to be to look that good doing it after that much time off against that guy in the cage? I mean, that was astonishing. Astonishing, but not surprising, if you know what I mean. And if you know anything about Nate Diaz. And if you do know anything about Nate Diaz, you know there's only one Nate Diaz. There has never been anybody like him before. There never will be anybody like him going forward. After all, this is a guy who was interviewed in an airport back in the day about his game plan for fighting Conor McGregor, when Conor McGregor was the biggest thing in the world. And Nate said the game plan was really very simple. The game plan is to go in there, hit him with some good bleep, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash. I mean, still to this day, one of my favorite quotes by an athlete ever. Again. The game plan is to go in there, hit him with some good bleep, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash. I mean, shouldn't that be the game plan for every fight ever? Go in there, hit him with some good bleep, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash. I mean, hell, I could train fighters. I could train any fighter, any gladiator. Hey, listen. What do you know, Rome? I'll tell you what I know. I got your game plan. I got your game plan right here. Oh, really? What do you know about the fight game? I know this. Here's your game plan. You go in there, hit him with some good bleep, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash. Yeah, that's a good idea. It's good, Rome. Tell me that one more time. The game plan is to go in there, hit him with some good bleep, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash. Best part about that, that's exactly what he did. And it was beautiful. Too beautiful. And for too long, it felt like that might be one of the last memories we would have of Nate. Because Nate did not step into a cage for 3 years. Nobody takes 3 years between fights and shows up without rust. Nobody except Nate Diaz. He showed up Saturday night, and not only did he not look like he had any rust, he actually looked better. He got in there against Pettis and went, we're talking about a guy who beat Conor McGregor. And yet Saturday, he looked as good as he ever looked. My favorite part of that 3-round fight is when he got in front of Pettis and gave him the and he did so after 3 years of inactivity. How the hell is that even possible? You know how hard it is to go 3 years between fights and then come back high level against a guy like that and give him the all right, I'm going to stop doing that. I don't want to lose track of the actual take here. Like years ago, Dana White famously said that Nate Diaz wasn't a, quote, needle mover. I mean, it's a pretty tough take at the time. But I understand why Dana said it at the time, that Diaz was not a needle mover. Saturday night, Dana said, quote, it's pretty hard to deny now. He's a needle mover. End quote. I'd add one thing to that. He's a needle mover and man, my man sure as hell does move the needle. He dominated Antony Pettis. Came near finishing, damn close to finishing Pettis. And that was a thorough and complete imposing of Nate's will on Pettis. And every time Pettis came close to getting going and taking over, Nate had an answer for him every single time. It was so impressive, so dominant, and it came after such a long layoff. Just Nate Diaz doing Nate Diaz things in the cage during the fight. And then Nate Diaz saying Nate Diaz things right after the fight. He started off with a shout out to the Nate Diaz Army mother bleepers. And the reason, he was asked, why were you out for so long? Or actually, he just responded and said why he was out for so long. Quote, the reason I was off was because everybody sucked and there was nobody to fight. Like, why would I come back to fight if everybody sucks? And then there was him calling out Jorge Masvidal. And what about that call out? Like, Nate has an issue with other fighters who don't seek out the toughest fights. To hear him tell it, he's been sitting around waiting for an opponent who didn't suck. He found it, then he showed up, and he beat him. And now he needs another opponent who doesn't suck. Problem is, according to Nate, there just aren't enough of those guys out there. Quote, I don't think they know how to do it. They're scared or something. But like I said, I don't want to sound all full of myself in riding around on a high horse and talking bleep, but I've got way too much money to be fighting somebody who's not interesting. It's an amazing take. Like, I don't need this. And not only do I not need it because I've got all my money, I'm not interested in this. So what does the guy do next? He's fought at lightweight. He's fought at welterweight. So what belt would he fight for next? None of the above. He's not fighting for the lightweight belt. He's not fighting for the welterweight belt. He's fighting for the baddest mother bleeper in the game belt. And in his mind, that strap currently belongs to him. Now you see why everybody loves this guy, or why so many people love this guy. Not only for what he says, but he backs it up. Not only does he say things like that, and nobody says things like that, he could take 3 years off and come back and fight the way he did and look as good as he's ever looked after 3 years off. The baddest mother bleeper belt currently resides in Stockton. And the only way you're going to get it is if you show up and beat his ass for it. In other words, Nate Diaz, needle mover, the baddest mother bleeper, and a true original. All hail the champ and holder of the baddest mother bleeper belt. The only belt that really matters. And right now, it is around Nate Diaz's waist. And if you want to take that from him, you'll probably have to kill him to get it. Because I think that's the one guy who probably is willing to die to keep that belt. The most important belt. The baddest mother bleeper in the world belt. And I love the guy that he called out. Masvidal. Not for any hate. In fact, like respect. Like, this is one of the only guys that interest me. And notice he didn't come out and say, hey, man, where's Conor? Get me Conor McGregor. I want that money fight. He doesn't want that. He already has his money. He wants the baddest mother bleeper.